Today's guest is Anmol Singh, who is a stock market trader and investor, as also an angel investor in startup companies and the author of Preparing for Success. So, Anmol, thank you very much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Super excited to dive into this with you. It's not every day that I get somebody from like a financial background to like do this. Like usually this is like the last thing that they want to be doing. So I'm actually excited to dive into this with you. But just for context, why don't you tell us, how you got to doing what you're doing and kind of what your story is?
Yeah, definitely. So I trade the stock market and options markets for a living. And I also have a business where we teach other people how to trade and have different programs and advisory services for those. Started off pretty much in college. I was 18 years old in college in my dorm room. And I think with most guys were interested in Wall Street or were interested in that. So that I was always curious about it. And while I was in my dorm room, applying for a bunch of internships or jobs and not able to get anything, it kind of dawned on me that okay, I may have to go off on my own and figure something out. So that was the stock market, and got introduced to that when I was 18, and I've basically done that ever since.
Very cool. So it's like almost like one path didn't really lead you to, what you thought you wanted, but it actually opened up the doors to something completely new and something completely better.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely not something that I thought about that I'll be in this business growing up. It wasn't. It was just one of the things I fell into, and then I just became more curious and started loving it.
Love it. Yeah, that's such a common story with not just myself, but with so many of the guests that I have on here. So what I'd love to then dive into is, given that you quote unquote stumbled into this and have built your success from the ground up, what is it that's, challenging for you right now that brings you here?
I think the challenge is more so managing multiple things for me. So, like, trading is my primary thing I do, but I don't need to spend all day in front of it. So, I do that from 9 in the morning till roughly maybe 1 or 2 p.m. And then I got rest of the day to focus on other things. And that's why we started, like live traders where we coach traders. So, my challenge right now is balancing everything, right? So that I'm giving my best to each of those areas because sometimes you, let's say, don't have a good trading day in the markets. Markets are going down, everything's just coming in, and then it drains your mental energy. So there might be some business tasks that you need to get done, but sometimes you just find yourself getting overwhelmed, so to speak. And I also have a bunch of new different projects that I want to launch. I want to take my book, convert it into an audiobook, maybe eventually into a course. And another business I'm launching with another partner that I teamed up with just literally yesterday, we signed the agreement. So one of the challenges that I have now is I know I can do it. It's no problem at all. It's just, that feeling when you have like a few things on your plate, you're like, okay, how am I going to organize time to this? So that's kind of my challenge at the moment.
Got it. So spinning kind of multiple plates, they all
Mhm.
need, my best attention. How do I give all of those my best attention?
Exactly. So I don't, take away from my existing business if I start putting in energy into the new one.
Got it. So you mentioned, okay, well, I want to know how to balance everything and how do I do that? So how would you define balance?
So I mean, typically balance, I would say may not be the right word. I try not to balance things because the more you try to balance, they become unbalanced. I think more so like time management would be a better word for that. Like how I can allocate certain amount of time to certain tasks without having the other one, which is my main, let's say, business, take a hit because I'm focusing on the new one. Sort of like Elon Musk, right? Like Tesla stock's taken a hit since he became the Twitter CEO. So then, how do we balance that part, or time management or time allocation, like managing the schedule properly? I guess would be one of the things.
Okay, so there's multiple components to this, right? So one is the actual time allocation, right? So
Mhm.
how do I divide up my time between this project and that project? Um, it also seems like there is a like brain real estate component. So
Mhm.
how do I allocate appropriate attention to all of the things? And there's also an energy component, right? Like it sounds like your key things when you most need your creativity is actually done 9 to, like you said, the 1 or 2, and then I don't really have the energy for it afterwards. So is that accurate as far as like what your current situation is?
Yeah, I think some days you have the energy and you can just go spot on, but sometimes if you have a bad day in the markets, then the rest of the day is just like a drag and you just don't want to deal with anybody. So it's one of those things. But it's also, I would say, in addition to that, would be the planning out my day a bit properly, so that, like, I think I noticed that my energy levels dip around like 5, 6 p.m. And then I just kind of zone out a little bit unless it's just Zoom calls or things of that nature. I don't get a whole lot of productive work done after, let's say 6 p.m. It'll mostly just be calls or meetings.
Got it. So tell me more about the like, okay, there's the bad day in the market and then the rest of the day is a drag. So is that because then you are like emotionally down, or like the internal state is one that drags you down, or is it something else? Like just tell me more about that.
So yeah, on a bad day, that would more so be like, you just don't want to deal with anything. You have that moment. And now, especially since I'm in New York City and you're in Canada, you could probably relate to that. It gets dark at like 4:30, and that I know affect my energy levels a whole lot. Because during the summertime, 6, 7, 8 p.m., you're working, it's light out, and you could get a lot of work done. But last 2 or 3 weeks, I've noticed right around like when it gets darker, I start like wrapping up my day, and I'm like, oh, it's only like 4:30. So it's one of those is a factor during the winter. So that's what I would love to get your input on, like how you manage your winter. Because last 2 winters I was not in New York City. I spent traveling in Asia and different parts of the world, which was nice and warm and sunny. So it's after 2 years I'm actually experiencing winter again, and definitely not surprised pleasantly with this at all.
Got it. So what is it about the warmer weather that you think gives you a different state?
I think it's just the light out. You look outside your window, it's like nice and bright. You're like, right, it's a work day, you get it done. Whereas I think when it gets dark, I'm already in the mode of, right, let's have dinner and let's just chill. And I think that could be a holdback now that I have multiple projects.
Got it. And when it is like when you were in those states where, okay, like I was in Asia and it was like light out for longer periods of time, did you continue to work longer during those times, or it was still kind of the same pattern, but it was just more pleasant?
I would say, I mean, I did work a bit longer, you know, at least till 7, 8 until there's light out. I think that's, yeah. So I think I definitely continue to work until that point. Although the energy levels, I would still say after like 5 p.m. ish start to like I think it's more mental than physical. I think I start just zoning out around that time, and it's more so thinking more bigger picture, but not if there's a task that requires me, then I'm not the best at the head of during the evening times.
Got it. So it's not like what I'm hearing here is it's not so much the like, okay, so it's sunshine, so it's like a habitual, okay, this is now the switch to go
Mm,
like sunshine finishes, it's now the switch to go do something else. It's also if I stretch out the workday, then like there's diminishing returns on my energy throughout the day, right? Like it starts off high and then it falls flat.
mm.
Okay. So do you do anything to recover that throughout the day?
Um, I mean, usually, not haven't figured out what I want to do for the winter part of it. Like when it's darker, I haven't really set anything in place at the moment. More so, just I guess I'm trying to wake up a little bit earlier to have more daylight. But but even that is actually a challenge for me because I get my creative ideas about like business or the bigger picture ideas usually at night when I'm detached from work and just sitting thinking. You get your best ideas. So still figuring the right, I guess, balance between waking up early and staying up late.
Okay. So now let's introduce another component, which is like, okay, well, where do I have the dedicated dips that are actually going to give me the space, like the mental real estate for the ideas to just percolate and come up on their own, right? Which is going to be a
Mhm,
separate issue than the rest of it. So it doesn't sound like you really have a clear idea
mhm.
or any real strategies to actually like actively recover your brain. Like it's
Yeah,
just
I
I
mean,
either work and work until I can't,
right.
and then I just repeat, and then like whatever happened happened, but there's no actual time and space for like oscillation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be correct to say. At the moment, it's just getting things done as they come up, but I haven't really set up a strategy yet for how I want to tackle this winter, so to speak.
Okay. Um, and I know you keep going back to the winter thing. So are any of these also issues when it's summertime, or then they like just completely disappear?
I would say they're there, but they're more magnified in the winter time, right? Like
Okay.
they would still be there, but you don't feel it as much because there's daylight, you're still working. So you just spend longer hours, whereas it's more magnified. So it's almost like a magnifying glass. All the little issues you could get away with, they get magnified during the winter.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Perfect. So I think there's a few things I would just bring to your attention, and these are invitations on where to look as opposed to like clear cut solutions, because you're not really going to know if there's solutions until you do enough things to actually test them and like put them into your schedule, refine, and like all of the things. So
Mhm.
really a lot of what you're asking is in the realm of behavior modification. So what are the behaviors, and I would actually say for you, that I have to add as opposed to subtract to allow myself to actually recover? So
Mhm.
first one, and this is probably potential like an easier environmental one, is have you ever played around with like blue lights or like UV lights?
Played around as like with those blocking glasses, you mean?
Blocking glasses, yeah, for the so yeah, sorry. So the UV for the glasses, but like actual so usually people for like the seasonal affective disorder will use them. So they're like blue lights to mimic
Mhm.
sunlight. There's people you generally use them for the mornings. Um I'm curious to see, like, have you ever played around with any of those?
I have not. A few years ago, I did buy those glasses that came out, the yellow ones that block out the blue light. I don't know. I just never got in the habit of putting him on. I put him on for it just felt uncomfortable, or if I'm, looking at my phone, which is I guess the purpose of it. But I was looking at my phone and the colors would be, not as I wanted, so I would take him off. I never got in the habit of it, but maybe that's something I need to look into.
Correct. So the actual glasses, so they'll block blue light from screens,
Hmm.
and that is a good habit to have. To like, if you have sleep issues, then that would be a place
Hmm.
or one of the things to start with. The light that I'm referring to is like it's literally like a lamp, but it shines light that's similar to daylight. So in
Hmm.
terms of giving you like a sense that there's still some daylight left, like it might be a good idea to experiment with that. That's a relatively simple kind of environmental hack to try and see, okay, when I do get those hours that are, more like that are still early but start to be nighttime, like the 4:30, 5 o'clock ish. Um that could be a potential thing to turn on and experiment with. So
Got it.
any
So that's
questions as
something
far
you
as
put on your, let's say, your work desk or something, shining it on you.
correct. Correct. Yeah, you
Mhm.
can get different sizes or whatever,
Right.
but I would start with the simple one and just see, okay, does this actually help before looking at more complex solutions on like, what kind of
Right.
light can I turn on in the room in general.
Mhm.
Right. So that's
Okay.
number one. So any other questions as far as that piece is concerned?
No, I think it's worth checking out for sure.
Okay. The other parts that I would really consider is as far as like the behavior modification, like right now there's very little time spent or intentionality around actually recovering your
Mhm.
mental capacity. So if you look at your brain not like this other thing separate from the body, but actually consider as an organ, like our muscles and our organs, they can't just work 24/7, right? Like you can't work out for 24 hours a day. You work out
Mm,
hard, then you need to recover. And all of the benefit actually happens in the recovery. So it's the same thing with your brain, right? And
mm,
if so much of your work is requiring a lot of your like brain horsepower, what you have to be intentional about is inserting as important as a meeting strategic times that are zero input times,
mm,
like where your brain has nothing to process, because as you've seen in those moments where it has nothing to process, it comes up with good ideas. So in the middle of your day, and generally that dip of, that 2 o'clock ish is a very common time for the need for like zero input time. And
mm.
that might be actually active rest too. Like it might be some sort of movement as well. Like I don't know what your habits are around like exercise or movement, but before I continue, like what lands for you from that?
So you mean like around 2 p.m. having like a your own little quiet time, or could be movement time, is what you're saying, like reflection.
It could be a lot of different things depending on what's most likely to work for you. So as examples of like personal examples, like for me throughout time, I've done different things to insert those things in there. So at certain times it was like I'll just go and like up the stairs in my building.
Mm,
Like I'm on the third floor and there's like whatever 20 something floors and I'll just go all the way up.
right.
Right. So not only does that give me some movement, but like my mind has nothing to do other than like just focus on me going upstairs. Right. I have kettlebells in my office. So when that kind of like I do kettlebell work before lunchtime. Right. So that
Mm,
allows my brain to just like do nothing. I've also gotten good at naps. Like I have a couch in my office because I actively like take naps.
okay.
So stuff like that is like dedicated time where my brain is forced to literally do nothing.
Okay.
And more often, like we will opt to do nothing but like scrolling our phones. But if you think about it, your phone is actually input.
Mm,
Like it's not hardcore input, like I'm, processing formulas and models of like stocks, but it's still input. Like I still have to process, there's still dopamine hits, I still have to scroll through, I still have to like input and take in what's in front of me. So what lands for you from that?
and a question that I would have is like, how long are your typical naps that you would be taking? Because I know some people say if there's a certain right limit, that if you go over that, then it's kind of just going into sleep. So like, how long a typical nap would you say is, not recommended, but like the decent amount that you're at?
So I would say no longer than 30 minutes or longer than an hour,
No longer than 30 minutes,
or longer than an hour.
or longer than an hour.
Correct. There's like
Okay.
basically what that recommendation is about. It's like you don't want to get into deep sleep and then
Mhm.
interrupt deep sleep.
Right.
So either I'm going to be like very superficial up to like 20 minutes to 30 minutes max. So I set a timer to like wake me up then. Or if I know I have some time and it's been like a very cognitively intense morning, then I'll say, okay, screw it. I'm just going to go. And then whenever I wake up, I wake up. Right.
Got it.
So that's generally been my process. And again, I don't know how you react to or what your experience is with, listening to things.
Mhm.
But for me, I found any sort of like either binaural beats or like hypnosis type tracks
Right.
to just basically put me to sleep.
Got it.
So that's more of a testing thing that you're gonna have to try out.
Yeah, I do that a lot too. Like I usually have, sometimes it could be hypnosis, or sometimes it could just be one of those, the chill step, lo-fi music
Yeah.
uh playlists. So I find myself using that a lot.
Yeah. So stuff like that I think
Mm.
will be helpful. And that's kind of where I go into the behavior bit, right? Like it's you got to find what is a behavior that you're willing and able to do for life that you can
Right.
begin practicing right now. So not can I like for the next 30 days do some hardcore version of this?
Mm.
but what's the lowest, smallest behavior that over time is going to compound into the result that I want, that I'm willing to do for life? How can I start and implement that into my practice?
Got it. And typically, for you, like how many hours of like sleep at night are you getting?
Generally, I will not be under 6. So
Okay,
for me, usually it's somewhere between the 7 to 8 ish. But I'm
right,
somebody like I know myself, and I generally operate better with more sleep than less.
right. Yeah,
So
same. I notice when I'm like 8 hours, then I really actually don't even need naps. Like I'm good throughout the day. But if it's 7 or less, then I definitely need a nap around like 1 or 2 p.m. or something like that.
yeah, perfect. So again, that's now knowing yourself. And then, right, so where the behavior bit comes in, it's really having some sort of feedback in mind of like, okay, even on those days where I don't need a nap, am I actively still sticking to my process and having zero input time?
Hmm.
Right.
Got
Because
it.
then you could do half hour of, okay, you're not actually falling asleep, but you're leaving your brain to just like do nothing.
Got it. All right, that makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah, and then as far as like the actual work routine, I think what you're really going to benefit from is just seeing where and how you can oscillate in terms of like some work, then some sort of active pause, then some work, then some active pause, and really trying to match the type of work you do
Mhm.
to your natural like biological rhythms. Right. We can get into more specific this of like your cortisol curve, but for anybody listening and for yourself, really like Dr. Jeff Spencer, who's the guy behind like I think what's his name? The like Tiger Woods, Bono, he's done a lot of work with anyway, it's just like a lot of like very high performance people. But he
Mhm.
has like the Champions Day schedule. And I think that that's a good thing to actually go through because I think it'll give you a structure to map out exactly how this fits for you.
Got it. And one more question regarding naps is, so so do you schedule the naps or like you take it as you need it? Because I think for me, I guess I would probably have to schedule it because I have like back to back meetings or work schedules. So how would you handle that part?
Yeah, so I would say if especially if you're like just anytime you're starting a new habit, I think
Mhm.
creating environmental triggers and structure is important. So I would schedule it initially.
Mhm.
Like for me personally, I'm at the point where I know when I need that time. And then if I'm recognizing that my schedule is such that it's getting so busy that I begin to miss these and then fall behind, then I will actively schedule that time to ensure that nothing gets booked
Mhm.
then. So it's a little bit of both, but I think if you're just starting out, definitely schedule and then don't change anything until you can get consistent with one thing. That's usually the mistake people make. It's like, okay, well, now I'm going to do these 10 things. And then out of those
Mhm.
10 things, 8 things get done for 2 days. Then 3 things get done on the third day. Then nothing gets done on the fourth day. And then you're like, okay, well, now I got to
Right.
try something else. So that's why I always stress like pick one thing
Mhm.
that you're willing and able to do for life that will move you closer to what you want. And then the first milestone is can I do this for any conceivable amount of time? Before you can actually make
Mhm.
that claim, before you can show yourself and create evidence of it, changing the plan doesn't matter because you don't
Right.
actually know that the original plan didn't work. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say you want to implement as far as behavior change.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Perfect. So yeah, I know it's kind of not necessarily all over the place. I know it's a bit of a different for anybody else listening than I usually do, but
Mhm.
does that feel complete for you? Or is there still something left outstanding?
No, I think it's definitely worth for me, trying it on and see how it goes. Like the combination of the UV lights and then the naps in the afternoon. And yeah, I think just try it out, see how my body likes it, responds to it. And then if it feels like the energy levels are getting there, then that'll be something for me to continue.
100%. So yeah, I mean, in that case, like if this feels complete for you, I mean, I'm cool to just wrap it up here, unless there's any other questions you have that I can answer.
No, so in terms of, I guess, sleeping, do you use, or maybe do you know people that use melatonin or anything else during the night times?
Yeah. So is that something you've tried before?
I have tried it and it does work. Like I do find myself sleepy, but sometimes then I wake up and I'm not like 100% like a game. If I didn't have melatonin, I'm usually waking up refreshed. Sometimes melatonin takes 10 minutes to wake up properly.
Okay. So then what's your question?
The question is from the people you've coached, or do you actually take melatonin and the other people? Is there any research maybe you're familiar with that is points towards it being good or not, or the right amounts?
Yeah, it's definitely useful for sleep. So my question to you would be, like, if you're finding that it helps, then why did you stop?
So the sleep part helps. Like it definitely helps me go to sleep. No brainer at all. But especially with my form of business with the stock market, I got to be like right in the morning. So with melatonin, I find like there's I found a little lag, but maybe because I'm taking too much, perhaps. Maybe I need to lower the
And
dosage.
leg and what?
Hmm?
Like what's
Like you
the
feel like a little
leg and what?
brain fog. Like you don't feel as refreshed of a sleep, so to speak.
When you wake up.
Right.
Okay.
But falling asleep is way easier with melatonin.
Okay. So and then when do you normally go to sleep?
Depends. Typical day would be like 1 a.m. and then be up at like 8.
Right. So I would say that's the first place to start. That has nothing to do with melatonin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if you want to be up and refreshed for when the markets start, then going to bed at 1 a.m. is not going to help anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first implementation is, can you modify your behavior to go to bed at 10?
Yeah. That's the challenge.
That 100% is the challenge, right? But it's
Yeah.
like people always focus on the wake up. Like when do I, if I want to
Uh,
wake up at this, what do I do to wake up? If you want to win the morning, then win the night,
mm-hmm.
right? Like good sleep isn't created in when you wake up. It's created in when you go to sleep and how you go to sleep. So
Right.
there's a zero or a very, as you've experienced, low likelihood
Mm-hmm.
that going to bed at 1 a.m. is actually going to serve anything. And like if you're looking for a force, like a multiplier in terms of like what can I do to actually like the tide that rises all boats, improving your sleep will also improve your energy throughout the day. It'll also improve all of your like literally everything we talked about will like exponentially get better if you fix
Right.
that one thing.
Yeah. That is something that's on my list of things to do because I heard it from a lot of people. I think after 11 p.m. they say cortisol is released into the body or something like that. So it's a conscious effort. Used to sleep at actually 2 or 3 before, so got it down to one, and slowly I guess work it down to 11. Would be I guess the number to aim for. If I go to at 11, I could get my workout in the morning earlier.
Yeah, it's like it depends when you want to wake up.
Mm,
Like if you want to wake up at 6,
yeah.
then the reality is you're gonna have to change your target to like 10. You know, it's have to be
Right.
asleep at 10, but being in and around the frame of like
Mm,
bed and sleep around 10, which is a huge jump from 1 a.m. because that's a lifestyle
right.
change, that's an attitude change, that's like FOMO change. Like there's a lot of baggage and drama that goes around making a seemingly simple shift
That there is.
like
That there
that,
is.
you
Yeah.
know? So that's really the parts like that need addressing
Mhm.
if you're going to make something like that happen.
Got it. All right, perfect. I got one last question. So the UV glasses that people wear, the blue light blocking glasses, how much before your bedtime would you be putting those on? So if you're gonna go to bed at 10, when would you start putting your glasses?
Yeah, so in general, I can't remember the full specifics of it, but like you can Google the 3-2-1 rule.
Three, two,
So
one.
it's like 3 hours before bed, you want to like stop eating.
Mm,
2 hours before bed, you want to, I think it's like stop screens. 1 hour before bed is like when you want to start getting ready or something like that. But
right.
the 3-2-1 rule, if you Google it, that'll give you a good breakdown of what you need to do for that.
Awesome. Perfect. This is great.
All right, cool. Well, in that case, yeah, it was nice and to the point. So yeah, if you could just then close us off, let everybody know where to find you, who's the best person to find you. Floor is yours for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think if people are interested to learn about what I do is my stock market, then livetraders.com is the best place to go. And if you want to get connected with me, then Instagram and Twitter are the best places. My username on both of them is Delta90, DELTANINETY. Don't ask me why I have this username. Got it a long time ago, but then I got a bunch of followers. I didn't want to change anything, so I just kept it the same. But that's on Instagram and Twitter would be the great way to find me.
Nice. Okay, perfect. Well, we'll include all those in the show notes. But Amal, thank you very much for coming on, and for Bill's listening, we'll see you on the next one.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. And always good to be on the other side and learn something. So.
All good.